Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Spanish Pavilion. Welcome to COP30 here in Belém. That's the last session of today in that pavilion. And first of all, sorry about the noise. But today we have several problems with the noise here. But maybe that in that session, the last session, we can relax a little bit. And we're going to talk in the next minutes about decarbonization, how to decarbonize in several companies. We have 3 companies here this afternoon, and we're gonna talk with them how we can decarbonize several sectors. First of all, with Carla Coloma, Global Sustainability Director from Fluidra. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Victor Gonzalez, Director from Excalibur Smart Mapping. Good afternoon, Victor. And Beatriz Fernández de Prada, Global Sustainability Director from Acciona. First of all, I would like to a brief presentation of each company, because maybe nobody knows about what about your work. First of all, Carla, in a brief presentation, in 1 minute maybe, what about Fluidra?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invite of being here today. Fluidra is the global leader worldwide in terms of in the pool and the wellness sector. We produce every single piece, material, or robots related to swimming pools. So it's a very, very huge market. We are an IBEX 35 company in the stock exchange market, so about in 45 countries in the world with 30 production sites, around 7,000 people in the different locations. So it's a global company for the swimming and pool wellness sector, with the headquarters in Spain.
Thank you, Victor. You have also an office here in Brazil. What about your company, not in Brazil, around the world?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us here today. Excalibur Smart Mapping is a natural capital data company. Our main activity is mapping. We do mapping with airborne technologies and satellite data. So our headquarters is in Spain, and we map any natural resource or any potential natural capital in the surface and the subsurface. As we speak, we have projects ongoing in Brazil, as you said, also in Saudi Arabia, in Zambia, and we work all around the world.
Thank you, Victor. And last, Beatriz, Acciona also is a global company. What about your work?
Yes, we are. I guess that depending on your generation, you perceive that Acciona is a renewable energy company or even like a sustainable urban mobility provider. But the fact is that we are a global solutions provider working in very like a diverse range of sectors, from energy towards real estate, and even providing not only water supply but sanitation and the full cycle, and also cultural services. So we are very atypical as a company, and we tend to present ourselves like a company in a new sector, integrating different sustainable solutions to tackle societal challenges. And we operate in more than 40 countries, among others Brazil.
Thank you to the short presentation, and let's go to start with some questions. First of all, Fluidra, COP30 will focus on accelerating mitigation efforts to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. How is Fluidra contributing to emission reductions and driving a transition toward lower carbon business models within its industry?
Yes, at Fluidra, we define our first sustainability roadmap by 2020. So at that moment, we already defined an internal goal of being carbon neutral and having carbon reduction targets aligned with the Paris Agreement, so a reduction of a minimum of 4.3% annually. And as far as today, I can probably say that we are tracking progress, that we are reducing our emissions to an average of 20% annually. So it's very good. And again, focusing now on the scopes 1 and 2. We have a long-term target related with scope 3, which is targeted also by 2050. And we are working on that, even though the priority now it's on the scopes 1 and 2. Some of the initiatives that we have activated on this regard is, of course, activating solar panels in all our production sites. We are about to have more than 10,000 solar panels installed in our own operation sites. So with this, and also with the contribution of our solar energy contracts, we are about to have a 92% of all the electricity that we consume in the group sourced in renewable sources, so produced by renewable sources. So with that, we have cut our emissions by more than a half since we approved our responsibility blueprint in 2020. But in addition to that, the most difficult part is scope 1. No, it's everything related with fossil fuels, and what we have achieved so far is the increasing more and more the usage of biofuels, electrification of process, a lot of capex, funding the climate transition in order to switch some of the most polluting processes that we have in the group, as the chemical production and also heating for some of the production of our products, to also switch all those processes to electric. So again, we can ensure that all the production is produced by renewable electricity. Also, our second source of emission is in our vehicles, because we have a very huge amount of people, of commercial people working in the commercial side. So now we have started since 2024 to switch all the vehicles to electric. So we have now achieved around 42% of this transition to electric vehicles worldwide. And the target is also in 2 or 3 years being able to have the 100% of our fleet just with electric or hybrid vehicles. With these two actions, we are going to reach the targets of being carbon neutral by 2027, which is our ultimate goal, and also reduce the real carbon emissions by this 4.3% as the Paris Agreement states.
Victor, in your case, it's a very specific technology company. How can artificial intelligence be applied to monitor the efficiency and real impact on climate actions?
Well, for us, being a data company, artificial intelligence is a game changer. It changes everything, because if you can improve the data with the information, and with more data, even improve more the data, you are making a big difference. If you think, now if you go through here in the COP, through the different pavilions, you have a lot of information about nature-based solutions, about payment bar results, and they all rely on data. And the better the data, the better the information for those solutions, for those payments. And in fact, some of the instruments which exist today, they are connected to the quality of the data. So at the end of the day, if with the artificial intelligence you can improve that data, it's a win-win for everyone. And this is the reason why we are investing in artificial intelligence. We have for our internal team, we have an agreement with the university in Stanford. We are working with universities in Spain. We have European Union R&D programs. So because we think that this is going to be a real need in any area of the climate change or in the environmental actions in the future.
And you can use this data in several actions, or more focus on climate actions?
At the end of the day, we have different user cases, and you can adapt to different uses. But actually, in surface mapping is probably one of the areas where this artificial intelligence can evolve faster, because going in other areas is more complicated, but you have a lot of data about images and surface mapping.
Beatriz, Acciona is one of the companies that sees the business case of sustainability beyond compliance requirements. Can you please share a little bit of the main sectors and geographies where the opportunities are emerging today and in the following years?
I'd say that, of course, I was not there to see it, but I've been told that Acciona has seen sustainability as an strategic direction or orientation since, since the 90s. The first wind farms were deployed and developed in Spain in the 90s, which is long ago, isn't it? And by that moment, renewables were desirable technology. But at the moment, we are all aware of the fact that we are in a very different cycle, in a very different moment. Even from Paris Agreement moment, we are, all of us, we are aware of the fact that we are in a new economy rising. And from Acciona, we tend to see, to frame this moment, saying that we are in the climatenomics momentum, meaning that for the first time, climate, with two main driving forces that I will deep into this more, are drivers of economic growth for the first time. So this means that this is also a game changer. Climate as such, not only AI, but of course it's a very important enabler for us, but climate as such is a driver of inevitable economic growth independently or irrespectively of political fragmentation, that we are all aware of that fact that multilateralism is not in the golden age. So we see mainly opportunities in two overarching sectors. First of all, clean tech. Of course, this market is growing quite a lot, and it's been driven by exponential deployment and driven by the decreasing costs now. This year, cost competitive with analog fossil fuels is evident, tangible, and this is driving electrification. So we are seeing opportunity, for instance, in electrification of new sectors of the economy, not only energy that has been fully decarbonized nearly, but for instance in transportation, electrification. So that is one of our targeted markets or addressable market size that we're looking at. And also the other driving force of this climate economics momentum, that we are seeing a great reallocation towards resilience and bioeconomy. So we are now trying to invest in more projects such as Fargo, more like resilient or infrastructure for adaptation. We have an anti-flooding channel in North Dakota. I don't know if you know it, but it's super interesting because this new resilience business case is driving us to explore new ways of financing structures. And in this case, this anti-flood channel in North Dakota is being financed, not only by the client, by public administration, but also on an individual base, taxing every individual because they decided it in a votation. So it is a concessional financing, new models that we are exploring because we are seeing that market. So very interesting opportunities in these two overarching sectors.
Carla, talking about adaptation and resilience, Fluidra operates in different countries and also with different risks. How is the company addressing that kind of risks?
Well, we have assessed all climate-related risks, so in terms of physical risks and also transitional risks. It's worth mentioning, as water is very crucial for our development. It's interesting to understand that the water risk that we are most exposed to is flooding. So, and all of our operations, the 90% of our operations are highly exposed to water flooding. So that's something that we are now quantifying in terms of financial impacts, understanding business interruptions, understanding the damages that these floodings can have into our operations, into our buildings, also into our people, because at the end, all those climate risks are also having relevant impacts on our people. So as of today, what we have been doing is defining emergency plans to address those risks in the case that they happen. So together with health and safety departments, which are normally leveraging the terms of emergencies, we have included the climate variable into those emergency procedures, in order to make people understand what they have to do in case of a flooding occurs. And also now defining plans to reduce our exposure to that risk. So that means that we are about to implementing some initiatives at the operational level in order to reduce this exposure, there are some examples, as for example, increasing the level, the height of the storage of our products in our operations, because we already faced some damages to our products because of these heavy rains and the flooding inside our sites. There is something that it's currently causing us a lot of financial impacts. And also, we are developing a training program through all of our operations, so people is aware that it's not just a procedure, it's a matter of understanding side by side which are the particularities that the people need to understand, or that the process needs to consider to avoid damages to operations, but also to the people. And the second threat that we have identified is heat waves, that we have heard a lot about heat waves in the different pavilions here at COP. And also we are, as Fluidra is having operations in many countries, as in Brazil, our factories in Brazil are exposed also to heat waves. They are experiencing long days with the temperatures higher than 30, 35 degrees. We have here specifically chemical industries where the procedures itself generate heat. So on those cases, we are defining like protocols to reduce of hours that workers are exposed to this kind of heats, having more break times in order to reduce the temperature of the body, increasing the availability of water at the operational sites, and also limiting and having some limits on the temperatures where the people need to be working, and also starting to define at which temperature people are not willing to work, this kind of initiatives. And also in the part of the transition risks, it's a very huge trend that it's related with the reputational things related with water and pools, and as water stress is becoming a more and more critical issue worldwide, regulators are starting also to limit the usage or the free usage of water for recreational uses, as our pools, So in terms of market acceptance, legislation, reputations, it's a huge risk that we have identified. So that's why we are also switching our strategy into defining what we call a positive pool. So we are redirecting our investments, the R&D focuses, in order to see how a pool is able to not longer use water, for example. So this is very, very innovative, and that all our efforts, all our strategies are to be able to create a pool that is not using water and then is not affected by this kind of risks that we know that are happening and are affecting already, and that they will affect a lot our business model in the future.
Maybe we can talk about regulation at the end of the panel, because it's an important issue, I think. Victor, in case continuing talking about risks, data management maybe can help us to manage critical risks?
Yes, of course, because at the end of the day, now we have a lot of information. Probably it's the moment in the history that there is more information available for any government or any private company to make decisions about risk or about environment or climate change or whatever. But sometimes if you don't organize that data, you don't have a data management system or a data management framework to take any conclusion about all that information that you have, it's completely useless. So we go to many institutions or many public entities which have a lot of data completely scattered along the organization, and at some point it's like they don't have anything. So organizing all this information is the key element to make decisions, to make well-informed decisions, and to also understand what is the risk. Because we talk a lot about risk, But if we cannot measure the risk, we don't know the risk. It's everything is a bit connected, and understanding the data that you have, the results that you have. I was talking before about the payment by the results, the payment based on results, and if you don't know the results, if you don't have the results organized, you cannot get any payment. That's quite simple in terms of, if you think about it, it's common sense. But sometimes we forget that it's not just about information. It's about knowing what we are looking for, knowing what we want to know, and having it organized.
Beatriz, Acciona in Latin America and particularly in Brazil have maybe the biggest projects. Can you talk about that projects, how implementing decarbonization, the economy here, and help us to that transition?
Definitely. Of course, Brazil is one of the most emergent economies one can recognize in this decade, and it's one of our most strategic markets. We've been working in that opportunity I mentioned before, which is electrifying transportation. And maybe one of the most paradigmatic projects we do have here in Brazil is the Metro Line 6, Linha Naranja, in Sao Paulo, which is the largest project in terms of metro of Latin America. It's more than 3 billion. And, well, it's a low carbon infrastructure, and it has not been easy. Well, it is a very paradigmatic case of public-private partnership, so that's the reason why the first thing to be said here, and the main takeaway, is that if you have the administration like pushing forward, of course it's always easier. But if not, the economic logic of decarbonization will be there. So in this case, what we did is to electrify, of course, the machinery, but we were a little bit limited. So what we did is, well, because we don't have that economic and technically viable heavy machinery, so what we did is to use HVO, so it's synthetic fossil fuel, not fossil, sorry, and we did it, and we used it in machinery, and the complexity of this project was that it was financed through a green financing structure, but with an additionality of a local impact. I don't know if you have heard of this, but it's when you have a green financing structure, of course your infrastructure is green per se. So what you do is, with the step down of the bank, you finance additional local initiatives. In this case, what we did is to finance training for vulnerable women and vulnerable young trainees. So we had more than 60% of women building the construction civil works that were undergo in that moment. So it is very paradigmatic from the social impact side of it, not only the low carbon or the transitioning point of view. So it was very interesting from the financing structure point of view, and that was what it made it possible. So I think it really connects with the agenda, the action agenda of this COP, that it is focused on the enablers, AI, the game changers, but mainly finance, AI, and so on, because now that we have reached this viability of clean tech, it's time to move to implementation, execution, and financing. For us, it's a very important tool for de-risking and unlocking this private investment in markets such as Brazil.
Thank you, Beatriz. Caroline, the last question, you identify water like a risk, but also water we can identify like an opportunity.
Well, in fact, we are just defined Fluidra's purpose, because there was something that was pending from our side, and now water, our purpose that we define is turning water into a better world, no? Because now we know that water is also our higher risk, but also our biggest opportunity. So we really think that if we are able to solve our water issue, the water risk that we are facing, we are going to survive, no? We are going to be much more resilient and we will stay, no? Because at some point, when understanding the risk that it can have to our business, even arriving at the risk of being unable to operate because water restrictions in some countries in the world, no, that make us rethink about, okay, we need to do something. So again, our purpose was defined for solve this issue. The R&D strategy, the top management, the business strategy has switched to be able to align the procurement, the operations, the sourcing, the sales strategies in order to switch to products that save water. No, so now all the company has moved to that direction, because if not, we know that this can have a very high risk in terms of continuity of the business. And inside the R&D, no, inside the innovation departments, that is creating a lot of opportunities, a lot of new ideas on how to reach, no, and how to skip on that risk. So we are having some innovation hubs. So we are integrating some startups into our company, no, to be able to start developing very, very innovative solutions at a very, very small level, also related with data, how to measure data, how to demonstrate at some point that maybe the pools are not as high consumer, no, of water as people normally think if you compare, no, with our agriculture or any other sectors that use water, no? So, but again, not having data is is relevant, but also starting not to find solutions that already exist in maybe in other sectors, in other in countries, no? And we have here at the COP a lot of examples, no, of the new business models that are raised, no, with this current climate risk that we are facing. So we are trying to capture all these ideas, because we really believe that the Fluidra that we know today is not going to be the same company that we will be in 20 years, no? And so the vision is to really change the business model in order to exist. So, and everything because of water, no? So yes, I really think that it's so important that it's really driving our strategy and our long-term strategy mainly.
We hope that in 20 years you will be better than today. Victor, you agree with that? Also in Excalibur, you identify water like a strategic resource?
Definitely. Probably, water is probably the most undervalued resource, because there is this perception that water is for free, at least in the people. Probably governments or companies are a bit different, but for most of the population in the world think that water is for free. And then it's difficult to channel investments into water, and that has been a feeling. And everybody understands at some point that climate change has an effect in water. I was reading today that, I'm not sure if this will be true or not, but this is what was here in the documents, 70% of the impacts of climate change are on water. And at some point, because you think about water, we talk about, well, Carla had another angle, and Beatriz also, but we probably think first in water scarcity. And it is true, but there is also the floods. And it's the changes in the sea level. So there are many impacts in water, in agriculture, everywhere. So at some point, it's so important that we have some kind of holistic approach to water, that we understand what has to be done, because not everywhere requires the same solution. Because of climate change, probably the different areas of the world are changing, and they require different solutions regarding water. If you go to Central Asia, they need solution. In Africa, other solution. In Europe, other solution. But definitely, we will need a common approach to all of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Victor. Beatriz, also, you have many COPs participating in many COPs last years. In that COP30 presidency, have very interest in accelerating climate action. Could you share some insights on which COP30 outcomes would be successful for Acciona?
As we mentioned formally, this is framed as the implementation COP. So when you're a company, and I guess maybe it's the same case for you from your specific point of views or vantage point of views, as the parties having an agreement regarding the enablers that will unlock private capital at speed and scale. So we need to divide, of course, success for us is the enabling of that capital flows. And for instance, now if we see the challenges in the emerging economies, when Acciona wonders, shall I invest here? Of course, there's demand. There's demand of infrastructure, water utilities, as well as social infrastructure like hospitals, as well as urban mobility, transportation infrastructure, and so on. The fact is that there is, well, a very high cost of capital due to high risk of that country. So it's very important, and a very successful outcome would be like an agreement and advancements regarding de-risking of investments. Meaning, for instance, if I name two of them, it's like, okay, having multilateral banks as guarantors for that de-risking and blended finance, so advancements in that regard for us would be very, very useful to unlock private capital in other areas that we have not explored yet, such as sub-Saharan Africa. And also the carbon markets, because we know that in Formicop, carbon markets were operationalized, but there is lots of challenges regarding implementation. So any advancements regarding registry, authenticity, transparency, and new bilateral agreements under Article 6.2 would be very much welcome on our side and very successful. So let's see what happens in that regard. And on the other hand, for other countries, like more in Europe or would say developed economies or in the global north, successful will be measured on our side having some advancements or outcomes regarding fostering demand for renewable energy, because now we're facing one challenge is that, okay, the cost of renewable energy is going down and decreasing and it will achieve to zero, which is super successful for renewable energy generators. Of course, we are facing now a mid-term challenge in terms of incentives. So beyond generation, that has been a focus in COPs like formerly, it is very important to have a balanced relation and focus in grid modernization, as well as fostering the demand for their renewable energies. For instance, fostering electrification of these additional sectors of the economy, such as transport and others different from energy. So that would be very successful outcomes for these unlocking private capital in new geographies.
Beatriz, Carla talked a few minutes ago about regulation. You think we have global regulation so soft, so hard? Is that regulation really a problem?
Of course, it depends on the jurisdiction. I'd say it depends on the political winds, and now we are facing very a challenge and a risk of regulation fragmentation, and now we're facing that. To our concern, regulation is not overwhelming, or it's not a matter of too much regulation. It's a matter of smart regulation. So in every single market, or we much recommend like smart regulation and very focused on green public procurement also. It's a systemic view, an holistic view, as you mentioned formerly. So we are willing to have regulation and to deal with it, but in a smart way. So for instance, for us, it's very important that green public procurement, in terms of including non-pricing criteria in public bids, so that we level the playing field with other companies that maybe are offering an infrastructure solution, but it's not green or low carbon. So if you're only assessed with pricing criteria, you are out of the market. So for us, changes in regulation and public and incentive mechanisms need to go there. It's not only about sticks, but also about carrots in terms of incentives.
Thank you, Victor. You think that we have a not easy understanding regulation, maybe in your sector?
It also depends. I agree with Beatriz. It depends on each country, on each jurisdiction. What we do, and it depends on each project too, because you know, we are okay with rules and with regulations as long as they are clear regulations. If we know the rules of the game from day one, they are okay. We understand what we have to do, what we are doing, and where we go. We have more problems when the regulations change on the way, because at that point it's very difficult to understand what you have to do next, and it's a problem about you cannot plan, you cannot do anything in advance, but as long as the regulations are clear from the beginning, any regulation is fine. If it is too strict, it's easy, you don't go. and having said that, it's better to have some regulation than no regulation at all.
Yeah, we agree. It's better to have regulation than no regulation. In your sector, Carla, do you think regulation help you or not?
No, it's not helping, mainly because our competitors are mainly in the US market. In the US market is not playing with the same rules as the European companies, not only in terms of reporting, which is, I will use that word, overwhelming in some points, but it's also very restrictive and much more ambitious. So I really think that regulation is really needed. We probably need more to be more specific on the concrete actions that companies are forced to do rather than just reporting. So we really need more regulation related with forcing us to improve some of the impacts, reduce some of the impacts that companies are having, and this is not happening in all sectors, just in some. So I really think so. But when you play in the global landscape, and when you have competitors that are not playing with the same rules as you, this is a competitive advantage, So we are seeing how our competitors are taking advantage of not being regulated as we are doing in Spain or in Europe. So that is putting us in a worse scenario because of that. So I really think that at some point, and mainly with the US companies, we will also face this kind of inequalities in that sense. But again, I really think it's a good way forward. So I'm here also at the COP to really push for more regulations and more implementations and commitments.
Okay, we hope in 20 years we can have better regulations to continue pushing to that climate actions. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Acciona. Thank you, Excalibur. Thank you, Fluidra, for being here today and continuing working hard. Okay, thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Thank you.